Hello, welcome to SolutionExec Live, Episode 2. I'm James Kaikis, one of your hosts, along with Jeff Margolese. We hope you enjoyed the first episode. We learned a little bit about Jeff and I. Today's episode, we are diving into details. You're going to learn a lot more about what it is, why we're doing it, who's it for, how you find value from it, and really what's to come on SolutionExec Live. I mean, the reality is there's so much happening in go-to-market right now, so much change, and so we want to create that place for executives to learn, to lean in, and to find value. And so, again, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. As I asked last time, I'm just being super transparent, is that we would appreciate you liking, subscribing, sharing this with your team, sharing this with your peers. We cannot wait for what's to come, and I think you're going to love the announcements that come from today's episode. So thanks again for your support. We'll see you at episode 3. Jeff, it's great to see you. Long time no see.
Yeah, it's been eons. I mean, I'm counting the seconds between the last time.
I love it. So, when this goes live, we'll have already passed your birthday. So one of the things that you love about the holidays that you didn't mention was that it's your birthday. And we're recording this right around your birthday. But something from the first episode called to my attention that I wanted to just call out real quick is that you were saying, you pretty much got a big job at VMware at 32 years old. And I was telling you, is like, man, when I was, getting my late 20s, early 30s, I was, I've been always very career focused. It was like my old 20s, that's a whole thing that we can break down. But you were pretty much telling me is like, yeah, I got the job and didn't really set out to have career plans. So I want to actually hear that from you, because I think that was something that was even surprising for me as we get into the episode.
Well, let's do a couple of things there. One, my official birthday is December 30th, which has always been a fun one, squished between Christmas and New Year's. Yep. So you might imagine growing up, what sucks about this and what's good at the same time. Usually everybody's around. Everybody comes home for Christmas, or, they want to hang out for New Year's. But can you imagine being your birthday, and especially in those college level days, right? Like, hey, it's my birthday. Like, let's go out and have some fun. Well, like, New Year's is tomorrow. Let's just attach it to that, right? And I always hated that. There was one year I said, guys, no, we're not doing that. Guess what? Tonight's the night. We're going out. Like, we're going to go out. We're going to get all banged up. We're going to have some fun. Of course, we go out, and nobody goes out on December 30th, oddly. Yeah, should have. You can get in anywhere you want. There's no cup charge.
That's so funny.
Well, they got half price, drinks everywhere you go, and they can't wait to have you. Well, that's because tomorrow's the big day. That was an epic mistake. Now back to your questions around, career and those kinds of things. I've always been the type that just wants to go do something fun and interesting. I've never ever had a career plan. I never set out when I graduated university, I'm going to be a leader of this and do that. In fact, because I unlike you, I was not a professional athlete, supposedly. I was a computer programmer, a professional computer programmer, right? And back in 1992, when I graduated, that was a pretty unique thing. There was not as many people doing that as you might see today. The geeks were not ruling the world just yet, so I used to hide. I act a little bit when I went up to try to meet people. But I never set out to like, I'm going to be an architect, or I'm going to run this or do that. I like coding. I was like, give me more. How many more programs can I go write? I just love doing that stuff. And as my career and the timelines progressed, that mentality still continued on. I knew to look for good companies, that moat thing, and it's got to be interesting, what's unique. It's got to be the right types of people. I definitely was always looking for that, but I never was evaluating like, I wonder if I can become a director at this company. I never ever thought about those things. And the couple of times I've made both either company or career-based changes, it wasn't because I was like, I can get a leg up here. I could tell it was time. We'll use VMware as a perfect example. It's a great company, it was 18,000 employees when I left. The revenue was probably, I don't know, $10 billion or something like that. But I could tell the market was shifting because SaaS had really started coming out, and then the hyperscalers, what we call them today, the cloud vendors of yesteryear, and I could see like, ooh, what is our moat? Like, we're a good company, but I don't know what we're going to be doing here. And I was like, yep, time to go. And I was like, yeah, I want to go work for a SaaS company. I wanted to be a pre-sales leader, which was what I was already doing at that point. But I wasn't like, well, I'm going to go run the SE org over there. It was just, that's the next job opportunity. And I was like, I'll go make the best of it. And to me, it's always been my own personal mantra of like, go make the best of it, do all the right things. I've never asked for a promotion. I've never had to apply for a bigger job, so to speak. They've always been given. And let's clear that's a lot of luck built into that. Coming to companies on these hyper growth paths, you're going to have a lot of career trajectory if you're at them and you're doing fairly well. And I was, doing okay, I guess. And we had huge hyper growth and ended up, having some pretty big positions in both of them. Obviously, the ServiceNow one might be a little bit bigger than what I was doing at VMware, but yeah, no career paths along the way for me. And that might be quite a bit different than a lot of people, maybe someone like yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yours.
Well, so I'm happy you shared that, right? Because maybe just an assumption on my end, right? As someone at your level doing this for so long, that those were your aspirations and goals, right? I'm maybe a little bit different because my maybe I'm not actually. Let me state that my parents never went to college. My parents never had steady jobs ever. Still, like I was kind of breaking the ceiling and breaking the mold, right? So for me, I kind of clicked in like, mid college where I was like, wow, like I need to get my life together and like try to like break the glass ceiling and try to change my trajectory. Right. And like, that is why I set out all kind of crazy aspirational goals for myself, was like graduate undergrad. And, as silly as it sounds, in 4 years, like I went to UNLV. Most people work in the industry. They make a lot of money. I was like the only one of my friends who graduated in 4 years, right? Like I went and got my master's degree in 1 year at Ohio University. I went back to UNLV to get my MBA. And like, I just always tried to take these stair step rolls up, which is also why I started a business, which is why I went and took a CRO job. So it's very interesting, right? So like we probably couldn't be more different in that aspect, which is always fun and unique, right? From the perspective of like, I don't know, for me, I was like, oh, I have to be a VP by 32, 33. Like I need to do this and that. But like I look back now, it's like, it's just on paper. Like what does it actually mean, right? Like, oh, cool, you're a VP, like you've got 8 employees, like that doesn't mean anything, right? It's the experience. And like that's been a big thing for me over the years, and people close to me know, is like I've been just like, I had multiple milestones, including selling a business and having a great outcome and changing my life. And everything felt so hollow that I was like, oh, this is it. Like, this is it. So I'm always moving the goalposts, but it's taken me a long time to stop and smell the roses, right? And actually enjoy the journey. Cause like the journey is what it's all about. You know what I mean? It really is.
Yeah.
So speaking of which, Jeff, our first episode, we want people to get to know us, but in this episode, we want to talk about Solution Exec. Like, what is Solution Exec? How are people going to find value on it? And I will say, one of the things that I've been explaining, right, when people ask me like, what is Solution Exec? And I say that we exist to equip solutions execs with the network resources and executive programming to lead in the next era of AI driven go to market. Like that's a word mouthful, right? But that's what it is today. And I know it's going to grow and change over time. But for me, it's like creating that place, right? Whatever word you're using, development, resources, network, people use community. That means different things to everyone. But to me, it's like, it's the place, right? Where the leaders can come together. I'm curious how you're defining solution exec.
Well, I didn't ask ChatGPT like you clearly did there with that.
No, Jeff. I didn't ask ChatGPT. I prompted GPT with a dump of notes to succinctly provide my notes forward for my email signature.
Yeah, I love that clarification. I appreciate that. Make sure royalties get passed along. Uh, but yeah, I think about it of the perspective that obviously the sharing and I want the information and all that, but I do love the idea of a potentially curated experience,
Uh-huh.
by the
Uh-huh.
way,
Uh-huh.
for solution leaders out there, at least at the beginning, because I see again that there's a bit of gap in the industry because there's not a lot of sharing going on. We have a lot of change more than ever before. And again, I go back to there's AI is changing both sides of the equation here. How we sell what we have to offer
Very
and
fun.
what we sell all at the same time too. And there's, I would say, endless amounts of content sitting in there, but there's definitely some good information and sharing to be had there because we're all somewhat at the infancy of it. And I can give you a good example. One of the hot things in the market right now is go to market engineering.
Uh-huh.
Most people
Uh-huh.
barely like, and then that, and I'd say forward deployed engineers are both, in that similar category, and they're quite new as disciplines, so to speak, which I love. I'm like, oh, that's pretty interesting. I happen to work for a company that's fooling around, we'll call it, and really we're more in the fooling around stage with both of those capabilities, roles. We actually do already have roles in both of those areas. That some of it lives within the solution consulting space, some is outside of it, and so I'm both curious. What are people doing with that type of role, technology, and all the things that might live in and around it? And there is no forum for that today. I
Uh-uh.
find there's, some voices out there, which, in the go to market engineering space, if you're going to look for a voice that goes no further than what Claymation and Clay over there is doing,
Uh-huh.
I think it's pretty interesting. I'm trying to learn as much as I can about that, but it's got an interesting spin and application. He's mostly targeting the inside sales realm. I think
Yep.
there's also a lot of other people doing that too. I think that's a nice piece of it. I'm trying to look at it as an example from the enterprise software space. What's
Uh-huh.
it like to go sell to a G2000 company trying to use some of these tool sets that are sitting out there? And I think there's a lot of benefit to sharing to a point. I can't go and share all the, unique competitive things that I might be doing, but there's definitely
Good.
some things to be shared there. And then, how are companies positioning AI as an example? I think
Uh-huh.
that's as an interesting, again, jumping off point.
Uh-huh.
That's where you're seeing an FDE, forward deployed
Uh-huh.
engineer, and the various ways that's happening. Again, I'll use another reference point. I'll say somewhat the pioneers in that space is probably Palantir right now.
Yep.
They are definitely well known for that. I can't profess to know all the things that they're doing over there. I'm genuinely curious about it, both from the standpoint of, hey, what is it they're doing? Their market cap is
Uh-huh.
that pretty interesting. So I'm sure
Yep.
there's a little bit of that there. And then I happen to compete somewhat with Palantir. So I'm just obviously naturally curious as to what's going on. But I look at just those two small pieces of what's happening in this marketplace. What
Uh-huh.
does that mean to a solutions leader? How are you going to deploy that? Better yet, and it was funny because I spoke to a fellow colleague in the solution leadership space recently around FDE, and they're like, "Yeah, my CRO came to me and said we need to have them." Okay, well, what are we gonna do? I don't know, but we need to have them. Go figure it out. And I'm like, interesting. So, how do you approach that? I mean, there's no manual, there's
No.
no book out there. Oh, I'm sure somebody's created one at this point, and
Yep.
maybe you can ask ChatGPT and all those kinds of tools. But I'd love to see the communal aspects of what can get created, and those are just one of
Yep.
two of the many big topics that are sitting out there. There's
Yep.
probably two of the biggest ones out there, but
Yeah,
anyway.
they are, Jeff, and I think what is exciting for both of us is that we both experimented. That's the word I like to use with FTEs, right? You've obviously doing it at a much bigger scale. That was my motion at my last company, right? And I think no matter where you are on the continuum, right, like it's worth educating yourself on this topic. And I think what I want to make sure people realize when we talk about solution exec is like, yes, we're going to talk about everything that is moving so fast and so quickly, but we're still going to talk about the foundational aspects, right? Like the foundations, the building blocks of the role and of the profession. And I think you've got a lot of that experience there because I think what you kind of said is everyone's on this continuum, right? At the end of the day, right? Like the level of maturity of your organization, how you're resourced on the solution side. And we want to be able to talk about everything in those types of realms that can cater to the different audiences based off their specific size. And I think what's unique about you, Jeff, is that you've seen a lot of that journey and that experience at ServiceNow, and now you can kind of bring some of those learnings from the traditional aspect and the foundations also to what's happening on the cutting edge.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be have some scale and be well funded. There's no
Yeah.
doubt.
Right.
But I think just as interesting to turn it back more toward you, James, because I know you and I have talked about this in various respects. Is that you were at obviously a very small company recently, startup, but you also had a lot of flexibility in how you went route to market. Throw in the extra piece was the fact that probably when you started, AI was this cute thing that you heard about on the news, and your grandma's, what is this Chat GPT thing all about, right? And it turned into
Yeah.
like, oh wow, there's some real uses, and I think
There
you
are.
were doing some pretty interesting things that, by the way, I couldn't probably do
Right.
at a big company where I'm at. So I'd love to
Yep.
kind of explore that if that's okay, just
Yeah.
for us, because I know you played around with. Let me go create an AI version of myself, of a sales rep, or something in those respects. So
Yeah.
just gonna tease that out if it's okay
Sure.
a little bit.
Yeah, Jeff. I think the biggest thing for me that I'm trying to lean on is that experimentation is probably the most critical thing you could be doing in your business today. And what experimentation means is different based off the company size, the org chart, whatever it might be. So I have met with many of executive teams, even of like multi-billion dollar companies, that they're like, James, like, tell us how we should approach experimentation, and that's not even on the solution side. I met with a $2 billion FinServe company that's trying to get sales and marketing aligned, right? I met with their board and their executive team on like how they should think about maybe all being compensated on pipeline versus MQLs and SQLs. And one of the things that I was able to do in an early stage company is I could shift the entire team month to month, quarter to quarter. But I like to share in a keynote that I did at Consensus Demo Fest about a lot of my learnings, which was like, I kind of came in, like your CEO said previously, it was like, hey, we're going AI first. And my whole team was like, whoa, 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 whoa. And I've got this whole concept of turning skeptics into believers. And so you've got to go find those micro wins, those small things that you can do that turn people into believers on the AI front. So, the one I'm most proud of, and I think that is starting to pick up more and more steam, is the account brief, right? Like we pretty much built a system that it started with inbound. When an inbound demo request came in, we ran, analysis on that person, on that company, their needs, whether they're private or public, obviously a lot easier with public companies, and built it into, we crossed it with our own value props and built a brief for our own teams to read about prior to calls. And then we actually took it a step further and put it into the docs and into the decks. And so when we were doing discovery or disco demos, we are very well equipped. And I think that's the big thing that I want folks to lean in on. And this is what we want to share with SolutionExec is like, let's share those micro learnings. Let's share those things that we can do. Whether I tell people all the time, if you're a big enterprise like ServiceNow, it's a lot harder for you to change behaviors of 1,000 people. But you can take a 10-person team in one of the regions and try something with a couple of key customers, which I know that you're doing, very, very frequently with some of your biggest customers, right? Like in the AI first initiatives. And so I think that's what's super exciting for us to be able to chime in on, right? And, whether it's on this podcast, right now, the podcast, you and I, we're going to bring guests into the podcast. We're going to have our newsletter that's going to break down things that we're doing, things that we're seeing, how to incorporate them. But I think the biggest thing, Jeff, that I want to highlight through myself and yourself and SolutionExec is that we don't want to just talk about things. We want to show people how to do them. We want to give them, going back from the first episode, that playbook that they can take to their business and say, okay, let's bring this level of experimentation. And when you get people in a room that are from some of the best Fortune, 50, 100,000 companies in the world, and you learn what they're doing, that's how we start to bring the profession forward, right? And we start to be the innovation center, and we start to be the ones that are leading on the bleeding edge. And to your points of being known for something, then it's like this to me, and I'm obviously biased, is like the most, I don't know what the right even word is. It is the best time for solutions profession in maybe 2 decades, because we are at the core of innovation, experimentation. And if you want to be known for something, you want to be endearing the sales, this is the time and the place to take the leap. So obviously I'm getting super excited over here, Jeff, but like, the time is now.
It definitely is, and maybe to use one of your quotes, we will try to turn some skeptics into believers. Wrote that down. I might make quote of the day or quote of the week at some point. By the way, we'll see what
Let's go. Let's go. I made it.
That conceptual sides of being able to, do the okay. Hey, here's a concept, etc. But show some of it. We talk about that a lot in the four walls within that I work on. I'm like, okay, like let's talk about a few things, but let's go show them. We even came up, and I didn't come up with this. It's one of my colleagues over here, but MTTD, not MTTR, which is the more common one you hear, which is mean time to demo.
Super
and I
interesting.
just love that. Doesn't mean we're gonna do demos here. We might do some demos. I'm all up for demoing. I've been dusting off that skill set for the past year and a half. Actually, a funny one. I've done more demoing in the last, since AI has really become a thing in the enterprise space from my sales perspective. I've done more demoing in the last, let's say, 18 months than I have in the last, I don't know, probably 18 years.
Wow, that's crazy. That's pretty crazy. I mean, speaking of demoing, Jeff, I think both of us are excited that on March 4th, we're going to be throwing the first SolutionExec virtual conference. And that's where we're going to kick off our programming for 2026. And we're going to hear from yourself, myself, and key people in the profession talking about the how, right? And talk about the how. And the one thing I want to highlight is, yes, SolutionExec is for senior leaders, and we're going to make sure it's carefully curated to those folks. However, our virtual conferences are going to allow anyone who wants to learn and join in and to chime in. And so I'm really excited about that. But maybe we'll tease something else, Jeff. I heard a rumor about April 15th. Have you heard a rumor about April 15th?
I have. Usually it's March 15th is the one people talk about. That's the Ides of March for those that remember their Shakespearean days. I just came up with that. But April 15th, I hear, is going to be a pretty exciting day. Maybe in one of the world's greatest cities in New York City, maybe Midtown Manhattan at that point. I think we're talking about doing an in-person live Solutions Executive Conference. First
ever for the senior executives in New York City, in what I hear is a 80th floor, Midtown.
74, just to be exact.
74.
Of the Hudson Yards Towers. That will be the ServiceNow office, by the way.
Incredible.
So ServiceNow has graciously agreed to host an industry event for solution consulting leaders.
Amazing. Jeff, why should solutions executives join us on April 15th?
Well, never mind the views, the food. Maybe there'll be some libations. We'll figure that part out down the road. But I continue to go back to that sharing at a very interesting time. Let's try to physically create that communal type aspect that's been sorely lacking. In fact, I'm not going to lie. Some of this comes from my obviously personal interest. I love hanging out with James. That sounds great. I have FOMO, right? That's the kids. They use that now. It's fear of missing out for those that don't know what FOMO stands for. And I was invited to speak on a panel for the value selling and the value engineering, we'll call it value engineering community. I was like, oh, it's pretty interesting. I didn't really know it was all about it. We were hosting it again. ServiceNow hosted that. And it was more of an industry type event for value engineers, value engineering leadership, by the way. Mm-hmm. And I showed up and I was like, wow, this is a very well put together event. And then the FOMO set in. And I'm like, wait a second. I love my cousins that are sitting over there in the value space. But I'm like, why don't we have this? We could do this. So as you might imagine, as I'm walking off stage, I'm pulling my phone out and I'm doing selfies all over. And I'm texting James over here saying, dude, we're going to have to do one of these. I'm not going to lie. So I went and booked it. Probably within 2 hours. Yeah. I'm getting the stage, calling all the people. Now I'm kind of wondering what I got myself into, but I think I got a good partner here that's going to help me figure that part of it out. But excited to host that. It's not competitive. I'm not competitive like this. I am. You can tell I am. By the way, I just said that we're going to make it even better than what that value engineering leadership thing. And they set the bar high, just to be clear. So
They did set the bar high, Jeff, because I know some people who were also at that event who, one, told me you did a great job on stage, but they also told me that it's a really well done event and they go year after year. And so, when people ask about Solution Exec, what is it, right? Like it's a network for the development of the profession, right? Again, as I will sound like a broken record, we're going to have our podcast, we'll have our newsletter, we're going to have our virtual summits. We're going to have 2 of those a year, but we really want to deliver on the in-person experience. I think it's been anyone who's been following me for a long time knows this is something I've wanted to do. I just feel like that the in-person is so needed. And I think the big thing, Jeff, is that we are going to be curating a very specific audience for this, right? And I think, I'm going to speak for what I've heard, right, over the last couple of years, and I've been highlighting episode 1 is like, a lot of the senior folks feel like, well, there's not something out there for me. And I think that this is going to buck that trend. That if you are at any of the best companies in the world, the biggest companies in the world, you're at the top of your organization, there's going to now be a place that you can learn. And April 15th in New York City is going to be that place. And so I'm super excited. I'm super thankful, Jeff, for you and your team for helping out. I'm super excited for our team to be able to go and execute on that event. But that is going to be a very, very interesting event for the profession that I can't wait for. The people that I've told, they said, sign me up, sign me up.
And I think it's a great yes and way to think about things. And what I mean by that is there already is a few live type pre-sales consulting type events sitting out there. Mm-hmm. This isn't meant to supplant any of that. I think some of those are great. I've never actually attended one of them. I think you've mentioned maybe Demo Fest that you've gone, spoke at, attended, which is great. And those always seem interesting to me. I love the conceptual side of that, and I love that there are companies and organizers out there willing to do that for the broad community.
Totally.
I think there's this gap around the higher end of the leadership scale. And obviously that's, what we're after with this.
I know, Jeff. I can't wait. For those who are probably wondering, well, how do I get involved, right? We're going to ask you to go to solutionexec.substack.com because we're going to be announcing everything on our newsletter. We're going to be announcing everything on March 4th at our virtual event with all the details and all the specifics. And then we're going to have our first conference April 15th. And there might be a second conference, but we'll tell you on March 4th. Jeff, I'm going to leave one more cliffhanger. I heard one more rumor. I heard that there's a book. Did you hear that?
Well, there's many books out there, but this one maybe that you're referring to in particular would be written by the 2 hosts that you're listening to right now.
That's right.
I've never attempted to write a book, so it's both exciting and scary and daunting all at the same time too. And for the listeners out there, the interesting part about it is the fact that clearly there's an age gap between the football player over here and myself, but the more interesting one is that he wants to talk about the book, not talk about it in that respect, but I mean in a funny way, meaning he wants to verbally do it. So he's using a audio-based translation. And I told him, I said, well, I'm old school. Now I didn't go as far as writing it with the pen. I would have probably tried some of that, but I'm old school, typing it out, not on some old typewriter. I'm excited out there, but it's fun to try to do it. I know for me when I'm and we've obviously started the process for doing this. What's fun is like I write some components out. I'm like, well, how many words is that? I've never thought about those things because obviously we're working with somebody to help us out, and they're like, oh, you gotta have this many words for this, and I'm like, words. Like when I was in school, they were like, no, you have to have paragraphs or how many pages, and tell me who didn't double space everything and write in block letters just so that
totally
you fill pages out, right? I feel like I'm doing a bit of that, but I don't think that's very self-serving for this this book. But it is fun to try to do it and get your thoughts down. I am really curious to see the final product because I know my 3 family members might be the only ones that'll buy it. They're pretty excited too.
I've got some family members who are going to purchase as well, Jeff. So it's good. And for what it's worth, you did handwrite some of the book already from a previous article. So the book is kind of going through the generations. And yes, I am talking my section of the book to start. Hey, I feel like I do better on a walk and a talk, and there's a little fluff in there. I gotta get out. But Jeff, I am so thankful to be on this journey with you, man. It has been really unbelievable to see how things have come together, and I'm super thankful for your time and your energy and your effort. And I know so many people are gonna find so much value in what we're doing. And so obviously SolutionExec.com and SolutionExec.substack.com has all the information. And March 4th is the big day for us. We're going to announce everything, all the dates, all the programming. And so I can't wait to see you there, Jeff.
Me as well. Exciting times. Appreciate doing this at such a high level and energy. So
yeah, I'm excited. All right, Jeff. All right. Take care. Happy birthday. We'll talk soon.